I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in sales and the pursuit of self-development. Man, do we have a treat today. We have an unbelievable guest, Victor Antonio. Last year, I went to the National Speakers Association event. It was called Influence, to pursue my dream of being a professional speaker. And I saw Victor on the main stage, and he gave a keynote unlike any I'd ever seen. It was so innovative. He had multiple personalities going on. He had many fun metaphors, including one on how sales is like dating. It blew me away. Get ready to buckle your seatbelts and learn a lot about selling today and be inspired along the way. We're going to talk about Victor's 7 dimensions of selling and learn about stories on his journey. Make sure to share this video and like the video so more people can benefit from the message. And with that, Victor, thank you for being here. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good, actually. I'm super excited. By the way, very grateful that you would ask me on your show, man. So thank you.
It is such an honor to have you. And by the way, to the audience who's live, feel free to pop questions in the chat. Victor is very willing to field your questions, but I have a roadmap of topics and let's dig into it. First off, Victor, why do you love this sales career path? And also, why is everyone really selling?
I don't know if you know this, but Chris, I started out as an engineer. And so, by the way, if I would even rewind it, let's rewind the tape all the way to the beginning. So my family's originally from Puerto Rico, right? They moved to the U.S. in the late 50s. I think my father had a 3rd grade education. My mother had a 5th grade education, or the other way around.
Wow.
And didn't speak the language. We were raised inner city Chicago. We were, I don't know, a few miles from the Cabrini Green housing projects, just to give you an idea. I mean, we were really in Chicago. And, we just weren't doing well. We were struggling like everybody else. Food stamps, government cheese, powdered milk. And I was the youngest of 7. And my mother said, if you don't go to school, get the education, you're going to have to go to work with, in the factory with your father. To which I said, I think I'll go to college. And so I go to college. I picked engineering because I heard they make a lot of money. Chris, I'd love to give you another inspirational story. Like, I saw the vision, and it was just, I need to find a way to make more money. And so I graduated from college as an engineer, worked for Honeywell and a couple other wonderful companies. And somewhere along the way, I remember, we had our first child, little Vic 3. And my wife says, I'd like to be able to stay home. I'm wondering if there's a way that you can, make more money. I said, well, there's an opportunity to be an account manager in Latin America. They're looking for somebody who speaks Spanish, technical background, and can probably sell. I think I fit the bill. And so we agreed to do it. My wife says, yep, let's do this. And that's how I got into sales. And from that, I've learned that sales, you got to understand this. Salespeople are the only profit centers in an organization. I don't know if you ever thought about that way. Everybody else is a cost center. We're a profit center. So I love sales because if you're working for the right company that has a good product, not necessarily the best product, but has a good product, has a great compensation plan, you can control your financial destiny. You can make as much money as you want. And that, to me, is like true capitalism.
So why are we all selling?
I mean, it's funny because everybody's in sales, right? So I have this thing where I ask people the question, I always do this because people always say, well, I'm not in sales. I say, yeah, you're in sales, and I would say, look, when you were born, you're a baby, you start bawling, right? That's your first sales pitch. You're selling your mother on the idea that you're hungry, right? As you get older, you start incorporating body language, right? You start begging for things like, mommy, can I have a cookie? Then you tilt your head, you stick out the boo-boo lip, and hopefully that she'll feel sorry for you. Dude, you're selling her on giving you the cookie, right? As you get older, you get to 15, 16, you want to use the car for the weekend, right? You say, Mom, is there any way I can use the car? I promise to clean my room, wash the dog. Now you're bartering, right? So we started out bawling, we moved to begging. Eventually we moved to bargaining, right? And so we're all in sales, right? We're all in sales. And, for example, when a guy approaches a woman, right? When a guy approaches a girl, he says, how you doing? What's your name? Where you from? What's he doing? Selling. Building rapport. He's selling, right? And then, he says, he starts talking about himself. Here's what I do. Here's my job. Here's my position, so forth and so on. And what's he doing? He's selling, right? He's selling his credibility, why he's worth dating. And then, he'll ask her, hey, what type of movies do you like? And, she'll say, well, I like romantic comedies. He's like, oh my God, so do I. What's he doing? Selling. Ask what type of music you like. You say country. You'll say, oh my God, I can't believe it. I do too. What's he doing? Selling. Some people would say he was lying. Now, I always ask the men this. I said, when you see a beautiful lady pass by, beautiful outfit, jewelry, makeup, hair did just right, what is she doing? Chris, what is she doing? No,
She's selling.
She's marketing. There's a big difference. We have to understand that there's a difference between marketing and selling. But everybody's in sales. Joking aside, everybody is in sales.
Oh my gosh. And by the way, Scott, thanks for showing up. We've got a live audience today. He loves your energy, Victor.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate you guys being here. We're all selling, I loved it. What was it from what to bartering? What were the different phases again?
There's begging, bartering. And by the way, when I do my presentations and my speeches, you're going to notice something. If you really pay attention, I do things in threes, right? So for example, there's bawling, begging, bartering, right? And so everything has three. I always use 3-part cadences because it kind of builds a momentum when you're speaking. Just a side note, by the way.
Do you apply that as a seller in presentations? I know we're looking through the lens of giving keynote speeches, but can sellers apply that rule of 3?
Oh, it's big. It's huge. By the way, there's this called the rule of chunking. Like, for example, why our numbers are 3, maybe 4 digits, long, total 7, of course. But they chunk the information because our brains have like I'll call it a 3 to 4 digit buffer. That's all they can hold. And so what I train salespeople on when they're doing presentation is, if you're going to end, for example, you come in for the landing, you got to stick the landing at the end of the presentation. You want the customer to remember 3 things. And I always said, what are the 3 things? A, B, C. So when I start a presentation, sales presentation, I said, here are the 3 things why we're different and why we're better than our competitors. During the presentation, I continue to bang on those 3 things. And when I get to the end, guess what? I summarize these 3 things. Now, at a minimum, they're going to walk out there going, these are the 3 things that Victor says that his company's best at. So yes, definitely use it in your sales presentation.
So we're going to shift to the 7 dimensions of selling soon. However, I've loved this story time and joking around. And I had another anecdote that I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
Didn't you join a South American sales team and it really was the bad news bears and you turned it around? I'm curious, what was that story? And what were some lessons learned on what it takes to turn around a sales team?
Dude, aren't you too young to know what bad news bears are? Do you really?
It just came to me, man.
Yeah, you use that
metaphors.
That's like an old school phrase. I didn't expect that coming from you. Yeah, a young buck gives me that line. That's great. So when I started doing sales in Latin America, I got pretty good at it, right? And I had that my engineering degree has helped me so much in the world of selling because I understand things from a technical standpoint. And then I just had to learn how to speak. And we can talk about how I learned how to speak at Toastmasters if you want. But what was interesting, I got good. I became account manager, director. So one day, at this point, I'm working for a $3 billion company out of Minnesota. Yeah, for sure. You betcha. Right. And they need a vice president of sales for Latin America. So they tapped me. So I'm going to be the youngest VP of sales for Latin America.
Wow.
The president at the time, his name was Lynn Davis, when you look back at least for me, we always look back at the horizon of our lives and you see people at the peaks who helped you when you needed help. That dude will always be in my list of people who helped me move along. So anyway, he says, Victor, I'm going to send you down there. I need you to grow the region. We're at $14 million, $14.1 million. We've been there for 10 years. We've never surpassed 14.1. I'm going to make you the youngest VP of Latin America. In general, VP, by the way, it's the youngest regional VP in the whole company. Go down there and whatever you do, Victor, do not sell less than 14.1 million. I said, okay. Fast forward, I go down there, move the whole family to Buenos Aires, Argentina, right? Ooh. And I'm running all of Latin America. And 3 months into this is a great story because 3 months into this, he calls me up and says, Victor, come on up. I'd like to talk to you. And he was the type that wanted to do things face to face. So anyway, fly back all the way to Minnesota. And I remember I walked in, Chris, this was one of those moments, right? I walked into his office, right? Beautiful, it's a beautiful office, mahogany, desk, beautiful bay windows, expensive art. How do I know it's expensive? Because it was ugly, right? It was beautiful, right? And I remember he's like, how you doing, Victor? I'm doing good. We exchanged pleasantries. And then he asked me this key question. He said, Victor, what can I do to help you grow the region? Oh, what a beautiful management question. What can I do to help you grow the region? Without thinking about it, Chris, I go, Lynn, if I had better pricing, I know I can grow the region. Because at that time, we were selling at about 30% premium. Listen carefully. We're selling 30% premium, higher than our competitors. And I said, yep. Lynn, I know, having studied the market for 3 months, if I had better pricing, I know I can blow that $14.1 million away. And then he looked at me. And he just kept looking. And then my amygdala, my reptilian brain was like, oh, sugar, honey, iced tea. I'm in trouble. There's something wrong, right? And so he said, Victor, let me ask you a question. To which I always say, when someone says, let me ask you a question, I can assure you it's not going to go your way. So he said, Victor, let me ask you a question. To which I said, what's your question, Lynn? He said, Victor, the only way to grow the region is to lower our price. I said, why don't I do this instead? Why don't I fire you, fire your sales team, fire the customer service tech support that you have, close all 5 offices, and just send the customer a brochure? I mean, if we're just selling on price, why do I need you? What do you think of that idea? He says. And I remember I looked at him. I'm not afraid. I'm from Chicago. I'm from the hood. I looked at him and I said, look, man, I don't know who brought this subject up, but let's move on to another topic, right? Because I was like, I didn't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
And what he taught me was we don't sell on price. We sell on value. And so then I had to kind of turn around and start selling on value and teaching my team how to sell on value. Now, I'm not saying I never discounted, but it was rare that we discounted. Here's what happened. For the next, let's say 3 months after that, I fired about 1/3 of my sales force because they didn't understand that we were selling on value, not price. And the statement I always tell people, and this is a powerful statement if you get it, the fact that you were hired as a salesperson is proof that you're selling a value product. Because if it was just based on price, why do I need salespeople? I mean, really think about this. If we're selling on price, why do I need salespeople? We bring salespeople on board so they can sell the value, not present the price. If you discount all the time, you're gifting. You're not selling, you're gifting. There's a gentleman by the name of Mac Hannon who wrote the book Consultative Selling back in the late 70s. In the book, he had this brutal line. This is like a murderous line. He said, discounting is the ignorant tax you pay for not knowing the value of your product or service. How's that for brutal? Discounting is an ignorant tax you pay for not knowing your value. And so two-thirds of my sales force got it. Within 2.5 years, we went from 14.1 in annual revenue to $98 million in the annual revenue, selling on value at a price higher than our competitors. So my philosophy is never position the price, always position the value.
So maybe we can start to shift towards your 7 dimensions of selling. And one of the first dimensions is prospecting. A lot of our audience is early on their career and they are trying to master it. But I realize at any level in the sales game, you need to be a good prospector.
Sure.
I imagine selling value and framing and messaging obviously falls within the realm of prospecting. So maybe that's a good segue.
Right.
When you need to sell on value, how do you think about framing value? How do you focus, like what aspects do you focus on and build great messaging?
Okay. So I have something called the value Trinity I came up with, right? And I always tell people, if you're watching this on video, you'll get the gesture. If you're not, you'll have to watch the video to get the gesture. And I always tell people, put your thumb up. So Chris, put your thumb up like that.
Oh, hold on. Okay.
You got it? Okay. So there's only 3 things, especially if you're selling B2B, there's only 3 things people care about. Increase revenue, go thumbs up, reduce costs, expand market share, right? That's it. That's all they care about. Increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share. If I am presenting value, you'll never forget the gesture, right?
Yeah.
So I call that the value Trinity. If I'm selling B2B, for example, I'm saying, if you can tie what you offer to say, look, Mr. Customer, here's how we can help you increase revenue. Here's how we can help you reduce costs, and here's how we can help you expand market share. Then you're selling value that's tangible. And they go, oh, I get it. Because in their mind, what are they trying to do? Justify the buy or justify switching over if they're using somebody else. And unless we present or frame the value in that way to say, and I just want to add this, there's 3 levels of selling. And I've been talking about this for 3-4 years now. And I think people are finally listening to what I'm saying. There's 3 levels of conversations you can have with the customer. The first level is give them information. And I always ask the question, do customers want more information? Yes or no?
Yes.
No, they don't. They're overwhelmed with information, right? That's
interesting. Yeah, you got me.
They're overwhelmed with information. So the next level, let's call it level 2, is insight. And I define insight as information that's beyond the obvious. Here's what I mean by that. When the customer goes, really? So you can do that? Oh, I didn't know that. Really? I can also do that? You can do that with your product? Okay, so I'll now have that ability to do that. That's insight. You're giving them something that's beyond your website, information beyond the obvious. The third level of information, the conversation rather that you're having, is impact. And that's really where the value Trinity plays. Increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share. If I give you information and stuff you already know, remember, customers are into the buying journey 80, 90% of the way, right? They have a lot of information. When you present insight and you make them go, I didn't know that, almost visualize you pushing them back on their heels, right? Because they're going, I didn't know that, really. Now you position yourself as a subject matter expert. And then the third level, which is the impact, here's how it's going to help you increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share. If I position myself as a subject matter expert, I've built a little bit of trust there. Now, once I show you how it's going to impact your business, you're more likely to listen to me. And that's the framing. Now, keep in mind, the Trinity again, 3 things in the cadence. Simple things they can remember.
Yeah. So what you're saying is information is just more noise. They don't want more info. They want insight, which is like something they didn't know that they should know. Like, correct. You can help with that and this and that. And then framing impact, like this is why this matters and how it'll increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share.
Right.
So, that is so helpful to help us all focus in on our messaging and like what actually matters.
Now, by the way, I know right now, because I can read the minds out there, and there's somebody going, yeah, Victor, but I don't sell B2B. I do B2C. All right. Same thing. Here's a different Trinity, right? So it's either physical, financial, or psychological. How can you help them? How can my product help you physically? How can it help you psychologically? Or how can it help you financially? Same Trinity.
That's a great distinction because the B2C world is so different than the B2B.
That's correct.
Now, what about it? I've lived in the B2B tech sales world, and cybersecurity is a big thing. And one thing they do, obviously, they reduce risk.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? Where does that live or fit in within the Trinity? Is it something that complements, or I guess we could tie it to saving money? You don't want to get a breach and cost millions of dollars, but how would you think about framing the value of like a cybersecurity solution?
Yeah. So years ago, I actually worked with a cybersecurity company called ERM out of Miami.
Oh, cool.
I actually did a lot of their sales training videos. And I mean, by the way, their foot in the door strategy was always the penetration tests, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But anyway, so getting back to that market, it's no different. For them, it's about losing revenue, right? So you can kind of flip the Trinity or invert the Trinity. Yeah. If you have a data breach because you're not doing these things, one is that trust is down, which means you'll lose customers, right? So then your market share has shrunk, right? And your revenues are going to drop just because you wanted to save a little bit of money, right? By not going with us, or you didn't want to pay just a little bit more. So that's how you would invert the Trinity.
Oh, that's a good insight. So it's still you invert the Trinity, but it connects back to the Trinity.
Yes,
and
it
the key
does.
things you mentioned.
Yeah,
okay. So
Great
prospecting is something, we all nerd out on. And so I just want your vantage point on why prospecting matters, even at the highest levels of selling.
One of the things we're seeing now, and it's getting worse now with generative AI, right? And is that, email was, look, all of us leaned on email just a little bit too much. I remember years ago, 10, 15 years ago, they're like, cold calling is dead. There's all these books right now, cold calling is dead. I'm like, you're on drugs. Cold calling, it's not dead. It'll never go away. But the thing is, so we all leaned on social media and we all leaned on emails, and we can actually say that we hide behind emails and our social media branding, right? And so we were hoping that we would draw a lot of inbounds. Now, if you look at some of the emails generated, come on, we get these in our inboxes. If on social media, if I'm on LinkedIn, I can't tell you how many I get every day. And some bot wrote it. Now, I think it's worse because I don't know what the email open rates were, but whatever they were, I would have that number again because it's getting worse. I don't even want to read emails anymore unless I know who they're specifically coming from. So now we're eliminating emails as real. I'm not saying emailing is dead. Cold email is dead. But again, I think it's less effective. Social media branding or trying to connect with people in DM, I think that's a better approach. I think you'll get more response if you're very targeted. I like cold calling. I like making those calls. And I think people get discouraged. There's something called cold call reluctance where people just get, it's not so much that people are afraid, Chris, of cold calling, is that they don't know what to say. Sometimes they don't know how to have the conversation and they're scared. And I think, one of the things that we always say, never practice on your clients. I think one of the places we should look for help today, and I showed a company how to do this. Have you used the ChatGPT. I like the Gemini, Google's Gemini. Have you used it to role play?
No, I haven't. And by the way, shout out or plug, didn't you write Sales Ex-Machina? You wrote a
Yes.
book on, and I don't know if ChatGPT is in there. I haven't read the book, but I'd love
It
to
is
check
not.
it out.
It's funny because I wrote Sales Ex-Machina in 2018, how AI is transforming the world of sales. This is before.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, and it was that same year that Google published the paper, Attention is All You Need, which is like the seeds for all this ChatGPT. But in there, the foundation is there of everything I talked about is happening today. So I think that's interesting. But on the role play piece,
Yes.
You can go in there, do a little prompt engineering, right? Just kind of say, hey, I want to do a role play. Here's the objection. Here's the type of company you are. And let's go through 5 cycles of role play. In other words, back and forth. And so that's one way to use ChatGPT. And again, I like Gemini. And then, by the way, Anthropic, Claude 3 is another good product. And
by the way, Victor, do you have a voice though that talks to you basically? Is that it, or is it like written?
It's written, it's text. You'll see it scroll and then you respond. By the way, it'll get there, and I'm sure there's probably programs.
It'll probably get there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's right around the corner. But here's the cool thing. So I showed a company how to do this. So if you're kind of insecure about outreach, then maybe you can practice with the bot by typing, right? Going back and forth. And you can you can prompt it to say, give me time to respond. And it will just have a conversation with you on a typical objection. Now, here's what's cool. You can also say, hey, role play, in other words, amongst yourselves. You can tell the bot to do that, Gemini. And here's a scenario. Here's the 1 or 2 objections. And then it will role play out both sides, seller and caller.
Wow.
Or receiver, rather. Right. And it'll do that for you. And it gives you an idea. It's great for ideation. Like, oh, I never would have thought of saying like that. And it gives you these great phrases to use. So again, if you're afraid of prospecting, you don't know what to say, use Gemini. Again, you can use Claude 3, which is an Anthropic brand, or just ChatGPT 3.5 at least. And so I think what I did, one of the things by the way, so I'll slow down because I think this is important. One of the ways I got to $98 million, this is interesting because let's talk about structure. I don't think you can eat the elephant whole. You got to go after, be very focused like a sniper. And so what I did, I'll try to describe this visually. By the way, if you want to see the presentation on what I'm about to say, I did the 10X conference, the first one with Grant Cardone.
Oh,
the presentation's on YouTube. And I think Grant Cardone interviews me after.
What should we search? Because after this video will float out in the YouTube C, it's going to post, and I can link in the description of the video.
Yeah.
So we could follow up after, but
yeah, you can go 10X, GrowthCon, Victor Antonio, Grant Cardone. Yeah. It should be in there. Cool. And so in there, I talk about how I first looked at the market and I said, let me figure out what the verticals are. So for example, I was selling telecom equipment. So it was cable TV, internet service providers, data center, wireless company, fixed line telcos. Okay, let's just use those 5, right? And then I said to myself, okay, is there enough revenue in the cable TV business for me to justify bringing on a salesperson? And let's say that the answer was yes. So I would bring on a salesperson to go after that specific market. So let me go through it slowly.
Quick question. Is there enough existing revenue that your company's generating to justify the cost or potential?
Is there enough revenue potential in that account, that vertical to justify me bringing on a salesperson? But your question is very good because what my boss said, Victor, you can hire as many salespeople as you want. But he was a genius when he came up with this. He said, for every salesperson you bring on board, you have to add 1.5 million to your quota. So there had to be at least 1.5 million. Talk about being clever. He didn't say, I'm going to tell you how to do it. He said, but if you feel you can do it, you just take the quota, which means if I started out with a $20 million quota and I hired somebody, now my quota was 21.5.
Yes.
And obviously it impacted my income, right? So I had to be very careful.
Oh.
And I'll give you one story. So we're living in Argentina. We wanted to go after the big telephone companies there. And I remember I hired a guy. His name was Jorge Filippo, great salesperson. And I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to focus on these 3 big companies here in Argentina. He's like, yeah, but there's all this other business. I said, no. I want you to focus on these 3 big companies because I know there's more than 1.5 million. We were doing like $300,000 with, total amongst those 3 companies. I goes, I know there's 1.5 in there. And I remember he said to me, he said, yeah, but I don't know anybody there. I said, dude, I don't care. Start with the janitor, work your way up, figure out everybody in the game. And he did. And so in those 2.5 years we were down there, he took it from 300,000 to a little over $3 million. in revenue, but all he did was sit on that account. And what I tell people, if they want to scale their business and not get frustrated, what if you're listening to me right now, what if you focus on a specific vertical? For example, I worked with a company who sells pest control, right? And they want to go after, different verticals. I said, well, let's say you want to go after property managers. Let's kind of make this tangible, right? They said, there's different markets you can go after in the commercial business, but let's say you want to just go after property managers. Pick property managers. Here's what begins to happen, Chris. Here's the magic of prospecting, I think. If I focus on a vertical, property managers in Atlanta, Georgia, what do you think will happen after 6 months of doing this with just property managers? I start knowing all the players. I start knowing all the companies. I start understanding the nuances, and therefore I begin to dominate that market because I'm so hyper-focused. And I always give this example that, when you buy a car, you ever buy a car and then the next day you go on the road, you start seeing your car? That same effect is happening when you're just focused on property managers. Not only do you begin to see property manager, understand their business, empathize with what they're going through, but you also begin to kind of develop this language of how to talk to them. And then you're not afraid to talk to them because you know so many people. And by the way, once you lock down one or two property managers, you can leverage one or two to get to other property managers. And that's what I love about that focused approach. And that's how we did it. We focused in on verticals. And so I didn't let people say, you can do property managers. You can also do, commercial real estate. You can also do office building. No. You just do this and win there.
So I'm in a sales role right now at a global startup. We're later stage. We're a services company. And what's cool right now is I have flexibility to sell throughout the country. And I can hit different verticals. But what I'm getting is in a role like this, if I can pick a key vertical and maybe even localize, like I'm in Austin, Texas, like folks in Austin, that will breed more success and go after the monsters. Am I onto something? Or do you think
no, that is it. That is it.
Just one vertical, or do you think two is like something, or you're saying just one?
I would start out with one. And so there's something called the TAM, right? The total addressable market. So within that market, within that local market, do the research. I know there's data out there somewhere for whatever you're offering. There's data to how big that business is. And if it's big enough, then you stick to it. And then what happens is, what began to happen is we focused on that. We started winning there. And then I said, okay, Jorge, you're on your way. And if you want to hire anybody, you know what I told Jorge? By the way, if you want to hire anybody, you can. But you got to take a $1.5 billion quota, right? That's how we did it, right? Because it all flowed out. And then I went to another vertical. Then we did, I think, wireless after that. Okay. And then we went after that vertical. And what's interesting is that me and the salesperson, in this case, Jorge, were able to talk about these specific verticals and be very strategic, very focused. It's like I always use that story about the squirrel, right? We lived in Minnesota, and my neighbor Harold had a bird feeder. Always putting food in a bird feeder, and the squirrel will always eat it. One day I come home and he's wrapping this sheet of like tin around the actual tree. I don't know if you've seen that in the Midwest. And he's hoping that the squirrel won't get up the tree. Guess what? Squirrel gets the food, right? Then one day, fast forward, he's greasing up the base of the tree, hoping that the squirrel won't go up the base of the tree. Squirrel gets the food. Then, you ever see those dog funnels? They put their dogs so they don't bite themselves. Well, imagine one upside down on the tree, around the tree with very sharp edges. It was getting violent right now. He was trying to really keep the squirrel out. The squirrel kept getting the food. Why? Because 24/7, 365, what is that squirrel thinking? How do I get that food? Imagine you got a salesperson. I would tell him this story. I said, Jorge, I need you to be like a squirrel. To which he said, what does that mean? You look at that thing and I need you to figure out, how do you get to the top guy? Whoever the decision maker is on the specs, whatever we have to do, how do you get to that guy? You focus on that. And dude, you just wake up in the morning. That's all you think about. And he's like, okay. And then when he started getting going, he got going. And by the way, because he started knowing everybody in that building, because it was like, I don't know, like 20 floors. Yeah. And it was a whole building. He knew everybody in the building, and not everybody, but the key players, and they knew him. And then he got comfortable selling, and then they knew he was the go-to guy, and that's why his revenues grew. He made so much money. He was God, he was golden.
Focus breeds success. I love that story of the squirrel. You were so full of stories. And we just got another comment. This is so informational, Chris. He is shooting out so much amazing content. He's a great storyteller. We're getting a lot of love in the comments. And guys, I don't know if I said this, but we all know and love Jeb Blount, author of Fanatical Prospecting, who said Victor was the greatest speaker of our generation. Are you kidding me? Jeb Blount saying that about Victor? Let's go.
Jeff is gracious. And by the way, if you want to talk to the master prospector, I would go to Jeff. I'll just say, his book, Fanatical Prospecting, it's just a monster book. And Jeb also, have you interviewed Jeb? Because if you,
so
you hear his story.
He's on the roadmap. I met, Mary over at Sales Gravy University. And so I think he's scheduled for a few months out. So we're going to have him on, and he commented
he's
on
an
our
animal, man.
teaser.
I think I put on the comment. He's a beast, man. The guy, it's like he's the hardest working guy in sales, right?
Quick comment, and I want you to riff on it. I noticed I was watching one of his keynotes, and it's just, you know what? JBJ, his son, came on the channel. And guys, by the way, Victor was the one who coined the term JBJ and gave him that nickname. He mentioned fanatical prospecting is just like this dogged commitment to like embrace the suck and rain or shine, show up. Basically, I'm summarizing. What are your thoughts on the reality, Victor, of like the grind of sales and just the value of dogged persistence and like follow-ups? I just would love you to riff on that.
But I got nothing to add to that. I mean, everything Jeb's all about, the pipe is life. Let me give some Jeb. Let me give you some bluntisms, right? You got the pipe is life. Pick up the damn phone is his other one, right? There's got to be some other, but he's right. But that ties into the whole focus piece. If you know what you want to go after, and here's the thing, Chris. When people sell a product or service, they miss this real subtlety. And I always ask them, I turn it around. I go, let me ask you something. Do you really believe that your product or service can help that company you're going after? And I asked this question. I said, before you answer, I said, be careful. I'm asking you to really think about what you're going to say. Do you really believe can help that company? And they go, and you used to see a lot of people go, yeah, I think so. That's when I know I'm in trouble. Because what I want to hear is, of course. And then I want to hear them say, and let me tell you how. Here's how we can help them, Victor. And when I hear that, I go, all right, that's the mindset. And a lot of people don't understand their own value or that they could really help a company. For example, I, like Jeb Blount, do sales training, right? So you ask me, Victor, do you really believe your sales training can help people make money? Close more deals, increase their revenue? Yeah. Let me tell you why. And I can just go into it. Right. There's no
quick plug, shameless plug that is not so shameless. We've got Victor's training linked in the description of this video. If you want to really dig into the 7 dimensions of selling, I highly encourage you to check it out, and check out Sales Gravy as well, which is Jeb Blount runs. I got to a sneak peek to watch Victor and his trainings on sales, and Victor, I just really enjoyed it. So quick plug, but back to the
conversation. By the way, again, big shout out to the folks over at Sales Gravy, man. And Jeb Blount and JBJ, man. It's a beautiful partnership we have.
Yes.
And I also have I work with Grant Cardone also I'm on his platform as well. And then I have my own Velocity Academy. So it's kind of cool when other people want to work with you. I mean, I think that makes
and the fact that we talked about this offline, but I saw you last year at the National Speakers Association. So for me, it's like meeting a celebrity. This is so amazing.
Oh, man, that's cool. For me. You're too kind, man. You're too kind.
But you were invited to be, even though you're not a member of the group, to be like the main stage speaker at the 50th anniversary. That's saying something.
Yeah. Well, they had 4. Let's be generous here with the accolades. They had 4 main stage speakers, 2 on the first day, 2 on the last day. They let me close out on the second day of their 50th year anniversary. And I think I told you I didn't want to close. I wanted the morning slot because morning slots are always easier for me because there's a lot of energy already. So I don't have to work so hard. And they were like, no, we're going to put you at the end because that's where we need the kick in the end type of thing. So but check it out. It's called Persuasion. If you want to see the presentation, it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of directions I want to take the conversation. I'm keeping track of time. We have about 25 minutes.
Sure.
But could you share a little look under the hood on Persuasion? Because I saw it. I've just never seen a talk like it. I don't know if there's any other of its kind where you had multiple personalities going. Just give us a little teaser on the concept, just so the audience can then check out.
So I don't know. And by the way, you guys can put this in the chat. That'd be kind of cool if you did. If you know who Jim Gaffigan is, just put a 1 in the chat if you know who Jim Gaffigan is. And Jim Gaffigan is a comedian, and what he does is he talks about something, and I think he was talking about cheesecakes or some type of cakes, right? So he does these jokes, right? And then he uses a second voice under his breath going like, we're talking about sales, and the second voice goes, how long is he going to talk about sales? I mean, is he going to move off this subject? And then he'll do that second voice, right? And I just thought that was such a clever shtick that it stuck with me, right? And then I kind of took that idea, the kernel of that idea. I said, you know what? I said, what if I set up a second microphone off to the side of the stage, right? And that second microphone represents my inner voice, the things that I'm saying in my head while I'm presenting that people never hear, obviously, right? And so I created this presentation I called it Preception, a presentation within the presentation.
Yeah, like Inception.
Like Inception, that's where I got it. Idea.
Dream within a dream.
I'm borrowing from Gaffigan. I'm borrowing.
Dude, I let the best artist steal.
Yeah, that's. But you create your own. You know, I give credit where credit's due, and I create my own. And so that was a tricky presentation because I have never seen anybody do a 2-microphone presentation, you know, as a speaker. And I wanted to be the first one to do it. And so when I got the call, when I got the nod, you know, like baseball, got the tap on the arm, like send them in. I said, you know, I'm going to do this one. And that was only the second time I've done it, you know, in front of all these people. And the first time I did it was at Jeb Blount's, you know, Outbound conference. By the way, shameless plug. I think it's in November.
I think I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. It's a great event. Jeb puts on just a fantastic event. And so I wanted to be the first person to do a 2-microphone. I said, what better place to do it than in front of all my peers?
Yeah.
And I also felt like this is kind of like, I'm giving you some just personal insight. I also felt like I had something to prove, right? Like if you're going to do something, go big or go home type of thing. So I said, let me just try this and do it in front of my peers. So it's either going to go way up or way down. I don't know, but I felt good going in. You know, by the way, my biggest concern, Chris, was the clock, because I had timed this whole thing, right? And now I'm doing 2 voices, and I know how I speak, and I can't go too fast, too slow. And I kept constantly, if you go back, I kept glancing very quickly at the clock. And I knew that at certain times, if I'm telling this story, I have to be at this time already. If I'm telling this story, I should be at this time already. And I remember this you don't know. I get to the end of the presentation and I got 3 minutes left on the clock. And that's when I did the do your thing. Remember, I don't know if you remember the do your thing at the end. Yeah. That wasn't planned. That was like, I looked at the clock. I had 3 minutes. I said, my brain literally said, well, we got 3 minutes. Are we going to do something else? I said, yeah, let's do your thing. And I just threw that in at the last minute. That was not planned. So check it out. It's called Preception, presentation within the presentation. It's on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, guys, check out Victor's YouTube channel. Check out Preception. I'm going to rewatch it, you know, bring back some good memories. But, oh, man. So when it comes to prospecting, everyone wants to know about cold calling, and you're saying that cold calling is not dead. In fact, it's probably king. It's high converting. It's effective. And you mentioned call reluctance and how to role play and overcome it. I would like to hear how you approach cold calling. The only thing before we get into like actually maybe a framework or how you open the call and things like that, any other mindset advice for the people that are really fighting the nerves and don't maybe feel a lack of confidence as they start out?
And by the way, that's the key, Chris. It isn't so much about, you know, structure, framework, what to say second. All that matters. I got that. But that's easy to find. That's easy to do. We've all heard the phrase, always hire for attitude and then train for skill, right? Hire for attitude, train for skill. When it comes to cold calling, I'd rather hire for attitude and then I'll train them on the skill. The mindset is this. There's something called, well, here, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a true story, right? So I'm in my office. I swear I'll tie this back to prospecting. Just hang in there with me as I tell the story.
I love this because hire for attitude, train for skill. One of your 7 dimensions of selling is a positive mental attitude. So I'm wondering if you're going there, but anyways.
Yes, I'm going there. I'm going.
Come on.
It's so this is about, I'll say 3 years ago. I'm in my office, right? And downstairs in my office, and all I hear is, I hear that. What is that sound? Right? And so I get up and I start looking around. And so there's a bathroom right next to mine. So sure enough, I go to the sink. I open up the cupboard, right? I look underneath and there's this drip. Right? And I was like, oh. And I was like, now, I always ask this question. I ask you to Chris and the audience. If you're a real man, you see a drip, what do you do, man? What do you do, Chris? What do you do?
I call someone to fix it. No, you fix it. You step up and fix it.
That's a good answer too. What I did is I went to the kitchen and I got a bowl and I put it under the pipe and I told my wife, it's fixed. She's like, really? And so I just close it and let it go. Let's just say another week goes by, right? If that, I got to refill the bowl once in a while, but I can tell that the drip is getting faster. So now, Chris, what do you do?
You get a bigger bowl.
That's exactly it. You're so with me now. You're locked in. You get a bigger bowl. And it gets to the
I'm in
point
it
where,
with you, man.
so it gets to the point where you can't I can't get the 5-gallon bucket under there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So then I say to myself, all right. We got to fix this thing. I don't want to call somebody. I couldn't fix this, right? And so I told myself, okay, Saturday, I'm going to do it. You know how you give yourself a date? Saturday, I'm going to do it. Friday, I go to Lowe's. I get all the stuff I need, all the PVC piping, what I think I need, all the equipment. Okay, Saturday comes, get my hit of coffee, maybe 2 hits if you know what I mean of coffee. And then I go in, right? So boom, I go in. And it was incredible. It took me no more than 10 minutes. I think closer to 5 actually, to just fix it. I even did the towel test. You know, you put a little napkin under there just to see if there's any drip. And I'm like, man, but like that, less than 10 minutes, I fixed it. What's the first question I asked myself?
When you fixed it? Or
when I fixed it, it's fixed. I'm like,
why didn't I do this sooner?
There, Chris, you're totally with me now. Why didn't I do this sooner? And so that's an interesting question. Why didn't I do that sooner? Because here's what happened. Back in the day, because I'm just a little older than you, there was no PVC piping. It was all copper. And every time I've worked with pipe in the past, it never went well, right? So here's what happens. When I heard the drip for the first time and I realized it was a leak, all these memories of all the things that didn't go well came rushing forward, right? And now we take it back to prospecting. We have this in our brain. We not only do we amplify things. You know, it was a bad experience, but I'm sure over time I've amplified that in my brain. And so now I brought all that forward when I saw the thing dripping, like I could never do that, right? So I had to choose between 2 evils, hire somebody or overcome my fear. And guess what? I wanted to not hire somebody. I just didn't want to do that. So I had to overcome my fear. Let me just try it. But all that fear comes from past experiences. And I am arguing that a lot of people are afraid to get on the phone because of some childhood programming or some early adolescent programming. You know, never interrupt people, never like talk when adults are talking or whatever it may be.
Yeah, interesting.
Or you got rejected. You approached the girl for the first time. She said no. You know, whatever it may be. You asked your mother for something. She said no. And we have these rejections. So we bring that to the phone. And that's where some of that fear comes from.
Wow.
Look, I've not met anybody who's told me about anybody dying from making a cold call. Nobody's ever died, right? Nobody's ever died. The worst you'll do is feel a little bad because somebody hung up. That's it. That's no blood is drawn, nothing. But yet we have this fear. And I think a lot of it is more mental. And if we can overcome the mental part, then cold calling becomes a matter of just having conversations with strangers. That's all it is.
Wow. How profound to look at some of the old programming that kind of rears its ugly head and is triggered by the potential of rejection. That's one of the best mindset motivation pieces I've heard on overcoming call reluctance. So, wow.
By the way, and it impacts a lot of things we do. Like, for example, I just started woodworking. And early on, I remember my childhood, you know, there was a couple of times I tried to play with, let's say, wood. It didn't go well. Or somebody told me not to touch the tools, right? All these things. And I had to overcome all that and start doing it, right? And just move out of my comfort zone and start just building stuff. Now I'm building stuff, right? But that first part was so hard it was weird because I had this awareness that I had bad programming. Sometimes we don't have to be aware of it.
You could act anyways. You were able to distinguish and be aware of it and say, I am not going to let that stop me.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm going to go back to, you know, when I talk about the bots and the cold calling and the role playing with the chat GPTs, again, I think there you'll get a lot of phrases. Here's what I tell people about talking and opening. You have to know what you want to say. In fact, you have to be able to sing what you have to say.
Sing?
Yeah, sing. Here's what, not sing like, you know, like a musician. By sing, I mean, it almost has to come, like, if I ask you for a song that you really like that you're always singing in your head, you're singing it, right? You're like,
oh, nah, what's my name?
Yeah, or something like that, right? You know, and so you have that song, and it's what? It's playing in your head. What happens is when you're talking to somebody, it's like you have to be able to sing the song. And that is, you're not even thinking about it because you're like, yeah, I know the words. I know the lyrics. I know the lyrics.
Well put.
Yeah. And so when you know the lyrics, you're not thinking about it, because if I asked you a tough question, you go, yeah, just that, yeah. Under my persuasion tab, the other P is I talk about even how you hesitate, right? That subtle moment that you hesitate, people detect it, right? Even at a subconscious level. We've all had the
Ooh.
experience where you ask somebody a question and they hesitate. It could be like a micro nanosecond. And you're like, no, I don't believe them. Just the way you responded, I don't buy it. And they don't know how to sing the song. In other words, they don't know how
Wow.
to sing what they have to say.
Oh, can we sing a little bit together and do a little role play?
Yep.
Feel free to pick like a type of solution just for the
Mhm.
sake of having a role play, and then we could
Right.
just I could pick up hello. And do you have a? I'm sure you've worked across industries, right?
Yeah.
It could be
Let
the,
me see. The
it could
most
be the
recent one is,
cybersecurity.
by the way, so property management, right? One of the things, so I always work with people on, by the way, in the Sales Velocity Academy, the most valuable program, bar none, the most valuable video course on there. If you wake me out of a dead sleep, smack me, go, Victor, what's the one program? If you can only keep one,
Okay, this
teach
is
one.
good.
It's blocking objections. And
Okay.
I wrote a book called Response Block Selling, and I believe you can download it from my website for free. Response Block Selling
Wow.
is the most valuable book in my whole library of 14, 15 books, because it talks about, I give you the psychology and the science of why, if the other person raises an objection, the chances of you changing their mind go down dramatically. But that's what we've been taught, overcome the objection. I show you science-based fact that if the client raises the objection, you're less likely to change their mind. But if I raise the objection, I control the objection, and then I can discard the objection. So for example, let's kind of roll, like somebody says price is too high. I know they're going to say that, right? I said, Chris, and watch how I raise the objection. One of the biggest questions I often get is, Victor, your prices are higher than your competitor. I just raised the objection, right? Now I offer to resolve it. And there's a reason for it, Chris. Do you mind if I show you? And what are you going to say?
Sure. Okay.
Hey, that's a mental nudge forward.
Wow, this is impressive that he actually is like, he's aware.
Yeah. And then I demo something. I show you this, I show you return on investment, cost of inaction, this and that. And then here's how I tie down the objection. Chris, can you now see how spending an extra 30% in the long run, when you look at your total cost of ownership, it's actually going to be a cheaper deal for you? And if I've done everything correctly, you're going to go, yes, I get that, Victor. Now, they can't use that reason for not wanting to buy. I just locked down that objection. Now, here's the interesting thing. Customers typically have 3, 5, never more than 7 objections. I call it the 357 rule. By the way, are you getting the 3, 5, 7?
Yes.
3 things, right?
Yep.
357. So they typically have the 3 objections, 5 objections, 7. Like if you're watching this or listening to this, how many objections do you typically get from your customers? List them in your head right now. There's 1, price. We always get that one, right? That could be 1. Maybe quality, delivery. What else? What do you got, Chris?
Okay, there are definitely the brush offs that might be just BS to get you off the phone. Like, I'm not interested. And so there's that. And then which obviously you need to understand like why and see if it's real. And then there's also, we're with another vendor that could, like, I'm in IT services, well, actually more so cloud services. A lot of times they have another partner. And so we have another vendor as another one.
Well, let's do both of these right now. Let's do both of them. The first one is, let's handle the not interested, right? Because the not interested ones mean that I'm targeting the wrong people. Let's just kind of deal with that one up front.
Okay.
When someone says I'm not interested, it's because 1, I've targeted the wrong person, or 2, my value proposition is off.
Yes.
That, it's just totally off. They didn't get it. So I got to work on that pitch. Let's do the customer switch. Let's do I'm working with somebody, and then let's do the tough one. Let me think about it, because I think I've solved that one.
Okay, cool. So, hey, we're with another vendor.
Yeah. I said, Chris, let me ask you a question. In business, isn't it always good to have options?
You got a point there.
Yeah. I said, that's all I want you to do is consider us an option. Do you mind if I show you what we do and how we might be just a little different? And again, I'm not trying to sell you. This is just an option you have. And it's always good to have an option. That's just good business.
I guess I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, I've never had anybody go, yeah, it's dumb to have an option. Nobody's ever said say that. So all I always do is that when someone says, I'm happy with my current supplier, I'm happy that you're happy with your current supplier. Let me ask you a question. And by the way, by asking a question, I take control of the conversation, right? So I said, let me ask you a question. In business, like in life, isn't it always good to have options? They always say yes. And you just say, That's all I want you to consider us is an option in case you ever need us. Now, this is my way of gently moving in. Do you know what I mean? Without them
That's a
saying,
smooth line, and you're confident. Let's be real. You're
yeah,
delivering it very confidently. You're prescriptive, like,
I'm singing
hey,
the song.
I'm a business professional, and isn't it like common sense here that it's good to have
Yeah.
options?
Yeah. Well, don't say common sense because that's
No,
presumptive.
no. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Between you and I, off the
You're saying
record.
I don't
Yeah.
have common sense?
Hey, no, good call out.
Yeah.
What are you, dumb? No, don't say that.
No. But again, that's part of the singing the song,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In business, isn't it always good to have options? And they're like, see how tight that is?
It would-
There's no fat on that line.
Hey, it was succinct. That's a quick thing. If I were to go on a call right now without practice, I'd be talking all over the place, unnecessary filler words.
Yes.
And it would all lead to tying into persuasion, like just doubting
Great
credibility.
Great.
So,
Well said, Chris, because you're right. Sometimes the thing is when you start over explaining, over justifying, you lose credibility. If you're confident, it's just that short. Isn't it in business? Isn't it good to have options? He goes, yeah, well, that's all we are. Do you mind if I show you a couple of things why we might be a good option for you?
no,
All right.
Victor, let me think on that a bit.
I said, now, Chris, when someone tells me they have to think about it, it's usually one of two things. You're not interested or you're interested but not sure. Which one is it?
I'm interested, but I'm not sure.
And usually when I'm glad you're interested, Chris. And usually when someone's not sure, they're not sure for one of three reasons. Right? One of three reasons. The first one is maybe you don't see our service as a fit for your company. Is that it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a fit. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's say I presented something, because I've already presented something, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then I say, well, if we are a fit, let's assume you said, no, you're a fit. You're kind of what we were looking for.
Yeah.
You got some of the things we're looking for. I said, well, then if we are a fit, then maybe there's some feature, something we don't offer that you want, and maybe I miss. Is there a feature or, some functionality that you're missing out that I didn't mention?
Yeah. This, another solution that we are looking at has data loss prevention capabilities that it doesn't seem right.
So data loss prevention. Now notice what just happened. I restarted the conversation again. I got you off to let me think about it. And now we're going to talk about data loss prevention. Now I can say one of two things. That's something we do have, right? I may have forgotten to mention it. So now we're back into the conversation. But I can say something like this. Aside from that, is there anything else? Especially if I know I have that feature.
Ooh, smart.
Is there anything else besides that? But let's say that you said, no, Victor, you seem to have everything that we're looking for. Then I'll say, Chris, then I have to assume that if we are fit and we have all the features, you're looking at all the functionalities, I have to assume this is a financial issue. Is that it? Now you have to say yes or no. Now let's talk about the psychology of this. If you say, well, let's talk about the reason why we want to nail the let me think about it. Let me think about it will extend the sales cycle. And as we know, time kills all deals, right? It just extends out. So you want to know, because you may not get another shot at being in front of this person again. This is great when you're doing a presentation. And so they said, well, let me think about it, right? Let me think about it. Now, people always say, well, what do you need to think about? How much time do you need to think about? These are horrible responses because especially well, can I help you think about it? I've heard people say that to me. Right? No, you can't help me think about it. I have to think about it. Here's what happens. I just threw a lot of information in your head in my presentation, right? It's swirling up there, right? And you need to think through this stuff, right? So your let me think about it could be very legitimate. And so you have think of a constellation of like stars. These are all these things floating in your head. And somebody's telling you, well, what do you need to think about? Well, dude, I'm swirling up here. Now, here's what the brain's good at. The brain is good at picking A or B. If you got three options, A, B, or C, I can do that. The brain can do that. So here's what I did to you, Chris. I said, when someone says, let me think about that, usually they're not interested or they're interested but not sure. Which one is it? The brain can pick because I've given you two options. Notice, even though you got a lot of stuff swirling, I've given you two options. You're not interested, you're interested but not sure. Now, if someone says, I'm not interested, then I stop selling and I ask why. Because maybe I didn't qualify the prospect or there's something that I missed. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, I'm interested, but I'm just not sure. Now, notice what I did. I'm glad you're interested, reaffirming that you're interested. And when someone says, Chris, that they're not sure, it's for one of 3 reasons. Now, your brain at this moment leans in like, what are those 3 reasons? The first one is maybe, notice what I'm doing. I'm funneling you through a decision-making process. The first one is maybe we're not a fit for your company. Is that it? No, you're good. Well, maybe funnel further, there's some feature that's missing. No, you got everything. Then I have to assume if we are, notice I repeat this, if we are fit, we have everything you're looking for, then the only thing left is that maybe it's a financial issue. And that's what I call that the 3 F's: fit, feature or functionality, and then financial. And at that point, most people go, yeah, it's just more than what we expected to pay. And then now notice what I did. I took it from let me think about it, like, and then it's uncomfortable to now, okay, now we just nailed it down to what it really is. Now, I discovered that there's a 4th F. And I'll end this riff on this, is that the person goes, no, it's not the money. We got the budget. The budget's been out. I just need to think about it. The 4th F is fear. Something in your presentation either did one of 2 things. You created more anxiety or you reduced their certainty. In other words, you scared them somehow. There's something in your presentation that didn't make them feel
Interesting.
good. I always say that sales can be, I can explain sales in one gesture. And I tell people to hold their hands up like this, right? And I said, here's certainty, here's anxiety. If there's an equal amount of certainty and anxiety, customers won't make a buying decision. If there's a lot of anxiety, well, they're not going to make a buying decision, right? So our job is to increase certainty and reduce anxiety. When you increase certainty and reduce anxiety, you increase what I call the confidence margin. Let me put this in numbers first, because it'll make sense if you think about it this way. We have revenue, we have a revenue line, then we have a cost line, right? Revenue minus cost equals profit margin. Fair enough? Revenue minus cost equals profit margin, right? Now, certainty minus anxiety, that's why increased certainty, reduce anxiety, creates a confidence margin for them to move forward and make a buying decision.
Love that.
Yeah. That's why today's customer struggles with confidence in making a buying decision because there's so many options. Matt Dixon wrote a book with Ted McKenna called The Jolt Effect.
Yes.
Right. And so in there, he talks about the fear of messing up, not the fear of missing out, the fear of messing up. So most people would rather not make a decision than make a decision and be wrong. And what they're looking for is for you. This is why positioning yourself as a subject matter expert is important, because you have to give them the confidence. You have to, here's the phrase, you have to imbue them with the confidence to move forward. In other words, I'll say, Chris, based on what you told me during discovery, based on what you're trying to do, based on where you're trying to go to, here's what I would recommend. This right here, or at a minimum, let's do this. Just shut up. And then now you recommended something. They're giving, because you're saying, look, I know what you want. I know what you're going through. I know where you want to go. Here's what you need to do. It's either one of these 2 options, but at a minimum, we need to do this. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And if they feel that you're with them and you're, again, on their side, you're giving them the confidence to make the buying decision. In other words, the confidence, certainty goes up, anxiety goes down. One way of reducing anxiety, by the way, that I like using is that I use this a lot for, just to give you an example of reducing anxiety. And that is, you ever want to sign a contract with somebody who goes, Victor, it's a 12-month contract, I'm not sure this and that. I say, why don't we do this? I said, 12 months is a long time. I said, why don't we just sign a 3-month contract? And at the end of 3 months, it won't automatically renew, but you and I will have another discussion in 3 months.
Yes.
Let's do that. And they'll go, all right, what did I just do? I reduced their anxiety. So if I couldn't increase their certainty more, I could at least reduce their anxiety and get that confidence margin up.
So this is like so helpful for what I'm up to in my current role, where I actually am in a deal and the customer has anxiety, and I'm thinking of doing exactly what you said. I'm proposing a 3-month engagement to dip their toe in the water. So by the way, Victor, this has been a mind-blowing conversation. We actually got the mind-blown emojis in the comments. Thank you guys for showing up. I know we have a minute left. I want to be respectful of your time, and I would love to have you on again in the future.
Sure.
So I just want to be mindful of your time. We got a question, but we have a minute, my friend. So
all right. I'm gonna do it. All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for the 1-minute answer.
So yeah,
I feel like Roger Bannister right now, the 4-minute mile. But go ahead.
Yeah, because I just we'll have this one question, and then I'll wrap up like just kind of the dimensions and calls to action. Okay, so Scott said, Mr. Victor, this talk track sounds like it's geared towards an account executive. You know that role, like account manager, account executive. Yep. Could you give an example for an SDR, please, and thank you. We might need a little more context, Victor.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if could you give an example for an SDR, please?
For an SDR, I mean, so you're trying to set up, let's say, a demo,
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that maybe you're
Or like an intro meeting with an account executive.
Yeah. Okay. So you're trying to do that. And so and again, I would need context, but what you're trying to do, remember, your close is to close the meeting. That's usually what you
Yes.
try to do. Close the meeting, close the demo, right? And so what you want to do is present it as a way of saying, at a minimum, you want to look at this because I think it can help you. What they're looking for you to do is to tell them over the phone, look, I've done the research. We've worked with companies like yours before. This is why I'm calling. Chris, my name is Victor Antonio. I'm calling you because, and I'm giving you the rough words here. We have this product. I've worked with companies that I'm sure you're familiar with, Here's what we've done for them.
Boom.
And then here's what I'd like to do. Set up a time for us to kind of go through a demo, whatever it may be, and do this. I'm telling you, you want to look at this because right now your market, if I understand your vertical, you're struggling with A, B, C. Is that right? And as soon as they go, yeah, well, then as soon as they go, he gets it. She gets it. In other words, you understand my market. Too often we're calling into a vertical without understanding their pain. I always talk about you got to puke with the customer. By that is feel their pain, right? And just say, I get your business. And I'll end on this. This is why when you focus on a vertical, you understand the pain. And go back to the example of the property managers. When I'm calling property managers, dude, I know your pain. I've talked to 100 of you guys already. I know everything you're going through. I know all the market movements. I know all the concerns in the market. And so now that comes through me in my conversation with this great confidence because I know the market.
You were confident in the way you delivered that.
Yeah.
And Scott, thank you for the question. He says, thank you, Chris and Victor.
Great.
So I just wanted to round out by encouraging everyone to check out the Sales Velocity Academy. We talk about the 7 dimensions of selling and we hit on a lot of them. But just to round out prospecting, process, product IQ, persuasion, pricing, positive mental attitude, and presentation. We hit on
we hit them all. By the way, if you really look at it, like go through one of them, go through each one slowly. Go prospect.
Okay. Yeah. Because I just want to kind of give a teaser too for the actual academy. So prospecting.
So we talked about that. That's cold calling. We had that conversation. Keep going. Next
Absolutely. One. Process. Can you give us any just high level nugget?
Remember, the process is first knowing who to go after. That's step 1 in the business. 2, understanding their business. And 3, when you're having that conversation, it's about increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share, tie your value to that. Go. Next one.
And remember the hand gestures, okay?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Thank you, Victor.
Right.
What a way to close out. Product IQ we didn't talk about. Just give us a high-level teaser.
No,
okay.
Because I said position yourself as a subject matter expert. Okay. Because if I'm selling a service or a product, I have to know their business so well that I can just talk to them. So again, product IQ is about knowing your product and knowing how to differentiate that to create that. Remember the whole thing I said we were selling a 30% difference?
You know what? Yes, you completely hit on it. Thank you for highlighting that.
We're gonna meet our commitment. What was the next P?
Okay, persuasion. And yes, you did hit on that one. Any other thoughts on that? Because just the fact that we don't want to over talk, we want to be confident and sing our song with confidence. Any other thoughts on persuasion?
Persuasion. Remember, 3 options. At the end, there's 2 ways to drop pricing. One is to give one big pricing and the other one is to do 3 options. And so again, I got courses on that'll teach you how to position pricing. But we did talk about that when you get to the end, there's 3 things they have to remember. That's the persuasion piece. But sometimes there's 3 options you want to give them. And I said, you're going to recommend one.
And is that, and so does that tie into your saying pricing, like giving 3 different options?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we've got pricing, and then finally, which we did hit on, presentation.
It was pretty much all about presentation, right? A lot of this is presentation. And I think you said it best. It's how do you set the frame up, right? And then within that frame, how do you execute your plan? And I always tell people when you set the frame, it's almost like bringing in a plane for landing. You have to stick the landing. So in other words, the landing is the call to action. I know I want to land on presenting 3 options, 3 pricing options. So that means I need to kind of bring that plane in. So when I get towards the end of that presentation, it feels comfortable, like I'm flowing into pricing.
Yes.
And hit that soft landing and boom, I'm there. That also has to be planned out.
Oh my gosh. And here we are landing the plane of this amazing conversation. Wow. I learned so much. I'm going to watch the game tape. And Scott said, again, he said, thank you. I'm breaking into sales. This is so helpful. So imagine, Victor, I believe this conversation is going to shape Scott's career trajectory, mine, and many others who hear this, especially as it floats out in the YouTube sea. So I'm going to break up some shorts after this minute, like golden nuggets. I'll share them with you and drive more views to this video. I want to encourage everyone to check out the Sales Velocity Academy. Check out Perception, right?
Mhm.
Is that the right name?
That is correct.
Perception. And then your book on diffusing the objection up front. What was
It's
the name?
called Response Block Selling or Blocking Objections, and it should be on the website. And by the
Okay,
way,
perfect.
it's not just, I think there's some pirated copies out there on the response block selling.
Oh my gosh. And Marco Perusa is throwing out the emojis. Great session in this and this.
Yeah.
Any other calls to action, Victor, before we tie a bow on this?
Just subscribe to my YouTube channel. On there,
Okay, cool.
every Sunday night at 8 p.m., Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, I do something called Sales After Dark, where I give 15, 20 minutes of fresh content.
Oh,
Every Sunday. It's free, obviously, on YouTube. So 8 p.m. Sunday Eastern time. Join me.
cool. I'm going to link that in the description of this video as well. Victor, thank you so much. I can't wait to the next time. And to the audience, to your success in sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one. Victor, you're the man.
Thank you, Chris. This is great.